Hey guys, it's Papa Nasty here, and today I'm doing a video about Lord of the Rings, Rise to War. We're going to be specifically talking about how to effectively use mitigation, avoidance, and CC, or crowd control. Now, first off, what is mitigation? Mitigation is where we reduce incoming damage. We still get hit by stuff, but we try to take less damage from it. Now, we mainly reduce incoming damage via command. Command is a super stat. It is the stat of stats. Right? If we look at all the different things that command does, it reduces damage received by army minus 2.54%, damage dealt by army plus 2.4%, healing granted by the commander's formation plus 5%. This is for a DD commander, Shadow. He has a very low base level, just 18 command, and he's got plus 7 because I upgraded him to tier 3. But so that's at a very low level of command. Now it's worth noting that by army means your units, not your commander. Right? So the damage received and the damage dealt, those bonuses only affect the units. They do not affect your commander specifically. Now, the healing granted by the commander's formation, this, however, affects both your commander and your units. And it is healing granted. So this is if your commander is the one doing the healing, or your unit is the one doing the healing. It is not healing received, it is healing granted. So it's very good on, say, Sunind. But they're not very useful on, say, Sauron, because Sauron doesn't do healing anymore in 2.0. Now, here is a comparison. This is Sauron wearing purples. Right? He's got a base value of 180, so that is literally 10 times as much base command as what Shadow has. And then, just from wearing purple equipment, so not gold, just maxed out purples, he's got plus 270 command. That gives him a total of 450 command. And this gives him minus 31% damage received by his army. So his units will take minus 31% damage. That is quite a lot of damage that is being mitigated. Also as well, we can, if we've got healing, right? Then healing is another form of effectively mitigation. It sort of falls into the same category, different, same but different. So if we've got high command, we're also going to be doing higher amounts of healing, right? And so this is just why command is such a super stat when it comes to mitigation. Now we can also reduce focus, burn, and poison damage by stacking focus. I don't recommend it though, because focus, burn, and poison damage are not the current meta. You are much more likely to take physical damage, and to reduce physical damage we use unit defense. How we reduce how it reduces the damage taken is that when someone attacks, they get plus 0.6% additional damage dealt for each point they have above the enemy's defense, up to a maximum of 100 points above the enemy's defense, after which it scales back massively. But so this means that if they have 100 attack more than your defense, then they can gain up to plus 60% damage. A typical purple item will give you around plus 18 unit defense. Plus 18 unit defense times 0.6, because you're going to be closer to their attack by 18 points closer than if you had another item on instead. So that 18 unit defense will give you around about plus 10%. Will give you around plus 10%, minus 10% damage received. And you've got 4 item slots where you could potentially put these purple items in to give you minus, to reduce this damage received. So you can potentially, if you have 4 purple items that are maxed out with unit defense, and they all have command and they're max refined, you can reduce the amount of damage that you take quite significantly in combat. And some abilities and equipment set bonuses can also reduce damage, and of course they can also give you more unit defense too. So keep an eye out for the different sort of abilities and equipment as well, because they can also be very effective. Now, what is avoidance? What is CC, or crowd control? Avoidance is where we take no damage from an attack, whereas CC stands for crowd control. Okay, so avoidance is things like evade, right? Whereas CC is where we use an ability like stun or madness to prevent an enemy from attacking us, right? So we debuff the enemy so that they are unable to attack us. Now, how do we use mitigation effectively? The more mitigation you have, the more effective it is. Okay, so in general, if you stack mitigation, stack lots and lots and lots of mitigation. I think that there are some diminishing returns when it comes to command. However, in general, the more mitigation that you have, the more effective it's going to be. So stack lots of command, stack lots of unit defense. Include healing if possible. Okay, because all of these, the more that we add them in together, the more effective they are. And so find support commanders who buff multiple units in the army. So for example, with Sunund, she can increase the defense of 4 allied evil men formations by plus 15. Right, so that's buffing everybody else in the group, not just her. That's a total of plus 60 unit defense. So that's pretty awesome. Also, as well, Sunund is giving a chance to heal if you max out the points, to 3 allied formations. So Sunund's doing healing, and as well she's giving a really good buff of unit defense. I mean, this plus 15 to 4 allied evil men formations, that's in total a buff of plus 60 unit defense, spread across everyone in the formation, in the army. And then we can also have, say with Black Serpent, right? He can increase the defense of men or evil men formations by plus 15. So these two, right, so Black Serpent and Sunund, they can go in the same formation together, and then everybody's getting plus 30. And then we add in Beruthiel, where she's increasing defense of evil men by 12. Right, so then we're getting a total of plus 42 unit defense from if we were to put these 3 commanders into the same army. Also as well, Beruthiel also has healing. I'm not a big fan of her healing, just because it only targets 2 targets, and I just feel like it's not. Yeah, I feel it's not that great. But however, her healing is just another great way of mitigation. Gorbag, right? Gorbag is another one. Tier 1 commander, so the other 3 are tier 3. So this might help sort of players who don't have many tier 3 commanders. Right, Gorbag. He's got Grey Leader, 15 defense to 3 Orc formations. He's also got Old Orc, right, which is healing for his own formation unit. So that's and that's a really solid heal there. Also, if you look at say like with Khaldun, because I wanted to include another tier 1 commander, his one's a little bit of a strange one, but whereby there is a 60% chance to reduce damage received by 10%. Now this is not on each hit like it was in 1.0. This is actually calculated at the start of the battle, in the pre-battle phase, whether he will grant this ability or not. There's a 60% chance that you get all damage reduced by 10%, and a 40% chance that nothing happens for 3 allied formations. So it's a very interesting ability. It's particularly good though because it does just flat out reduce the damage. Rather than like unit defense is really good, but 10% mitigation is stronger than 15 unit defense. Problem is, of course, that it's only 60% that it's going to work, so it is less reliable mitigation in that sense. And of course, it only affects melee units. But anyway, so the other things that we can do to help with our mitigation is that I mentioned before that the attackers gain a damage buff based on how much higher their attack is compared to your defense. Now, if your defense is higher, then you will reduce their damage buff. But also, if their attack is lower, you will also decrease the amount of damage that they're dealing. Because they won't be as high above you as what they were previously. Now, the best buff for this is Sauron. Attack, defense, and focus of 3 enemy commanders minus 15%. This is applied during the pre-battle phase. So if you have higher initiative, then you can potentially reduce things like even White Council. You can reduce the focus damage, the effect of their focus. But the big thing here is that this is very good against whales, because if someone has, say, 200 attack on their Dane or their Shadow or whatever, then you're going to reduce their attack by 30. But if they have, say, 300 attack, right, which they're probably not going to have 300. That's a bit too high, but if they have 300 attack, then you'll reduce it by 45, and so this just really helps to bring them back down to size, because it's scaling as a percentage rather than just a flat figure. It's not as effective against if you're fighting some guy who's using blues and purples, then it's not going to be as effective against him. But then if you're fighting someone who's in maxed out golds, Sauron's buff, the enemy, is extremely strong in terms of mitigation. Obviously, it doesn't affect their units, so if they've got, say, Gil, then it's not going to affect the damage that their heralds or whatever Gil's using, whatever damage he's going to be dealing, but his units deal. But it will affect Dane and Bjorn and the other, big sort of heavy-hitting damage DD commanders, and so that's where this is really effective. Also, of course, when you max it out, it'll affect all 4 commanders, so takes away a lot of the luck out of things. Also, Witch King has a similar ability where he reduces the attack, focus, and defense of 2 enemy commanders. And it's only for the first 5 rounds, and this is a flat figure, so this is more effective against sort of lower tier players, but it's still a form of mitigation, and so I wanted to include it here because a lot of players don't see the value in this skill, but this can be a quite good skill to have, given that Witch King is a very popular commander to include in armies. Also, the last one I thought I'd mention here, and because I'm not including all the buffs, but this is from Glacier. For the first 4 rounds, attack of 3 enemy formations minus 20. Alright, so that's because it's the enemy formations, that's both their units and their commanders as well. It's only for the first 4 rounds though, so it's not necessarily that amazing, but that's still, that's the equivalent of having plus 20 defense for all of your units in round 1 to 4. So that's pretty solid. Or maybe not all your units, only affects 3 enemy formations, but it's just something. It's just examples, and I hope that you can look at the commanders to see what sort of buffs and debuffs you want to utilize. Now, next, how to use avoidance and CC effectively. Now, evade buffs don't stack. Okay, so for example, if you have Corsairs, which have a 10% evade buff, I don't believe that the Undyings minus evade charges will be added to the Corsairs. Okay, you will get the Corsairs minus 10% chance to evade, but you will not receive the Undying's evade buff stacks because you already have the evade buff on you. Likewise, stuns don't stack, madness doesn't stack. So if you are already stunned, you cannot be stunned again. If you are already mad, you don't go mad twice. This is particularly relevant when it comes to Sauron's madness and the Undying's relic. The Undying's relic will activate before Sauron's the Deceiver ability, and so as a result, you cannot. Whatever target is targeted by the Undying's relic will not be eligible for madness. It'll just come up with an error if Sauron's madness targets that same target. So if you have too many stuns or too much madness, then they will if they hit the same target, they're not going to do anything. So if they hit the same target, they won't do anything. But also as well, even if you hit the same target once with madness and once with stun, if you've stunned them, then the madness isn't going to be effective because they're not going to go mad. Even if they go mad, it doesn't matter because they're stunned. They're not going to do anything. And so, in this sense, a lot of the CC abilities don't stack well. However, evade charges do stack well with crowd control. So the Undying has this ability here, Undead Commander, which gives you a 90% chance to evade damage taken for each of the first 4 hits. And this affects 3 formations. Now, this is very strong when you add in any type of crowd control, because you're going to be evading those first 4 hits. But if you crowd control the enemy, then they hit you less often, and therefore you're not going to burn away those evade charges as quickly. Admittedly, there's only 4 evade charges, so they disappear pretty quickly regardless. But they stack well. And in the same sense, if you're playing NRP, then White Council stacks very well with CC as well. Now, not all crowd control is created equal. You need to do the math. Now, luckily for you though, I've done the math for you for most of the most commonly used abilities, crowd control abilities. But we'll take a look at some of these anyway. So we've got Weapon Master, Voice of Sauron, Ringwraith, Lord of the Nazgul, Lord of Gifts, Gorthor Thawa, or whatever. Right, so over here, this is Undyings, Sarumans, Witch Kings, and Saurons. Now, for Weapon Master, what we do here, and this is just to show you how to do the math as much as anything, but also you can refer back to it. Alright, it's got a 15% chance to inflict stun on the target for 1 round. So we convert that to a decimal, 0.15 times 3, because there's 3 rounds. Yes, there's 3 rounds that it deals damage in, and then there's 2 targets, and that works out to 0.9. So on average, if you have 5 points in Weapon Master, you will stun a target for 0.9 rounds each combat, over a 10-round fight. That's not hugely effective. You will probably stun someone for 1 round. And now the bonus of this though is that it is within the first 3 rounds, and these are often the most important rounds. So this is where it combos reasonably well with sort of Undead Commander, because you can save yourself some of these evade hits. But In general, it's not a very effective crowd control when we compare to, say, Voice of Saruman, which is 50% chance to inflict madness, and it's gonna activate on 5 rounds, rounds 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Right, and it only affects one target. So that's 2.5. So 2.5 on average, 2.5 rounds during combat. He will inflict madness on an enemy formation. I say an enemy formation. It's actually like it's separate. It's calculated separately for the unit and for the commander. So an average of 2.5 rounds for the unit, 2.5 rounds for the commander will be spent in madness state. So that's really good. Madness is still only 50% to be effective, but if you get your madness off and they hit their own team, then that is extra amazing. So Ring Wraith by comparison, 1.2 rounds. So it's a little bit better than Weapon Master, but then you consider that you've got to put 10 points in to get that 1.2, and that's only half as effective as Voice of Saruman. Next, Lord of the Nazgul. This is a really good crowd control as well. So here it's effectively the same as Voice of Saruman, except that it's doing a stun rather than madness. So stuns are just a bit more reliable, not quite as effective. If madness, obviously, if they go mad and kill themselves, then that's awesome. But stuns more effective, more reliable. Lord of Gifts. Now this Sauron is just the boss when it comes to crowd control, because he only needs 1 point in this, and he's got a 1.8%, and he'll affect targets for 1.8 rounds in combat, and that's only costing him 1 point, 1 out of 10 points to get this crowd control effect. And then he's got his other ability here as well, which is going to be 1.5 times, but it's for 2 rounds. It's a 2-round stun, right? Has a 50% chance to inflict stun for 2 rounds. So on average, he will proc this 1.5 times per battle, and it will affect them for 2 rounds. It is the strongest crowd control effect on evil that I know of. Sauron is very, very strong both for mitigation and crowd control, especially as well when you factor in that he also has the Deceiver, which will inflict madness in the pre-battle phase as well. And next thing is that just initiative and the rounds crowd control is effective can be important. And this is just a different way of thinking. Okay, now I'm going to use Sauron as the example here. Now, if Sauron, so he uses his 2 crowd control abilities in rounds 3, 6, and 9. Okay, because they're round 2, so they've got a 2-round cooldown or warm up, whatever you want to think of it as, and then they will be applied. So they're applied in rounds 3, 6, and 9. Now, most commanders will have their strongest abilities will be applied during rounds 3, 6, and 9. If Sauron has higher initiative than those commanders, then he will apply his stun or his madness or whatever before they use their ability in that round. If he applies his ability, if he applies a stun before they use their ability, then he's got a 2-round stun that will delay their ability, so that instead of going off in round 3, it'll go off in round 5 instead, and then it'll have a 2-round cooldown. So it'll go off in round 5 and round 8, and then there's no round 11, so it doesn't get a chance to go off a 3rd time. So if you get a stun off in rounds 3, 6, or 9, you can prevent the enemy not just from doing their regular attacks, but you can prevent them completely from doing one of their abilities, one of their big damage abilities. Likewise, Lord of Gifts, of course, if you get that off before the commander uses their ability in round 3, 6, or 9, their big damage ability, then you can, well, if the madness is, if they don't resist that madness and they start chopping up their own team with their big damage ability, that's awesome. Comparatively, if you have lower initiative than their commanders, then when you use your ability in round 3, 6, or 9, the other commander will have already used their big damage ability. As a result, you will not be able to stop them. All that you will probably stop is you'll stop or delay their shorter cooldown abilities, their round 1, their abilities maybe, but these are the smaller ones. You want to be trying to stop the big damage abilities that only go off in 3, 6, and 9. And if your initiative is lower, then you will not stop these abilities from going off. This is one of the big reasons why initiative is so important for Sauron. With higher initiative, he can CC enemy commanders much more effectively than what he can if he does not have high initiative. If his initiative is lower, then he just misses out on that opportunity to crowd control them. So try and get Sauron's initiative up via the agility set. This is one of the key things to playing as evil. The rest of his stats, obviously you want to have some mitigation and things for him, so command and unit defense. But yeah, you want to have high initiative on Sauron, and in general on your commanders that are going to be CCing in rounds 3, 6, and 9. In rounds, in rounds 2, 4, 6, and 8, right? If you got like say Voice of Saruman, then that's fine to be slower because you do it so often, so frequently that you're doing it every other round, so it's not as big a deal with the initiative. But anyway, I hope this has helped. So what you want to, so the main thing that I want you to take away from this though is that with your mitigation effects, they get better the more mitigation you have. With your CC, they don't stack well. Okay, so your stuns don't stack, your madness doesn't stack. So if they don't stack. So don't stack too much crowd control into a single sort of team because it doesn't. They end up hitting the same targets, and then it's not as effective. But if you go for mitigation, you can stack as much unit defense, as much command as you want, and it will get more effective the more that you have. And crowd control, you need to be using your initiative for Sauron, and initiative for anyone else that has really sort of. I think Sauron's the only one really, but so it's just a different way of thinking. Anyway, this video has been really long. I hope that people find it useful, and that you don't feel that you've just wasted 30 minutes of your life. But let me know in the comments what you think. Hope it's effective. If you like the video, please subscribe. Like and subscribe and all that. That'd help me out. But yeah, thanks all. Catch you later.